We've built a global financial system that moves billions of dollars at the speed of light. But under the surface, the infrastructure designed to keep that money clean is cracking under the pressure of sheer volume. This infographic shows a staggering imbalance. Every year, financial institutions spend $274 billion on anti-money laundering compliance, yet the global rate of actually stopping illicit funds sits at less than 1%. The root of this failure is the binary paradigm. Current systems rely on a rigid allow or deny software check. Faced with uncertainty, this bivalent system forces premature resolution, creating ghost governance, where high-level software policies are easily bypassed by lower-level execution processes. Instead of blocking suspicious capital before it moves, we default to a permissive pay-and-chase model. We generate endless suspicious activity reports that merely document a failure after the settlement has already occurred, rather than preventing the crime in the first place. This vacuum in accountability becomes lethal in modern markets. Human agents are entirely overwhelmed by high-frequency automated systems, executing millions of trades a minute. This stock chart shows the direct consequence: a flash crash triggered by algorithms operating with zero governed oversight. A massive, instantaneous drop in market value driven by machines acting without human verification. When an artificial intelligence can cycle through a decision in 2 milliseconds, traditional software policy is practically standing still. It is too slow to intervene, and worse, a simple root access override can bypass the software checks completely. We have engineered an ecosystem that executes first and apologizes later. By optimizing entirely for latency, we have stripped the system of its capacity for accountability. A new architectural framework seeks to solve this by installing ethics directly into the circuitry. It begins with a foundational law known as the Goukassian Vow: pause when truth is uncertain, refuse when harm is clear, proceed where truth is. That vow translates into an operational layer called the Goukassian principle, enforced through 3 strict gates. First is the lantern, a mandatory certainty check before any pathway initiates. Next is the signature, cryptographically binding an action to a human owner. Finally, the license grants computational permission only after those 2 conditions are met. This creates a hard constraint known as no log, no action. As this diagram shows, an API strictly requires a cryptographic permission token. The evidence of a decision, a verified log, must physically exist in the ledger before the action is ever allowed to execute. This removes human discretion from the equation entirely. Governance stops being a social promise written in a compliance handbook and becomes a cryptographic obligation that the system cannot physically skip. The breakthrough that makes this possible is a substrate known as Delay-Insensitive Ternary Logic, or DITL. Unlike traditional processors, this is an asynchronous, clockless architecture where execution pathways literally cannot advance until the proper legitimacy states are satisfied. The enforcement happens at the atomic level inside a memristive cell. By utilizing different resistance states, the hardware encodes human hesitation directly into physical matter. It creates 3 stable states: refuse, proceed, and a crucial middle ground. That middle ground is the epistemic hold. When the system detects uncertainty, a massive electrical resistor physically halts the flow of energy. The hardware forces a pause, making it impossible to trigger an action without verified truth. To move from hesitation to action, the gate requires a verified cryptographic pulse. Because this is built on the laws of physics rather than lines of code, bypassing the hold state would require someone to manually alter the physical material on the circuit board. You cannot release a software patch to overwrite a physical resistor. This forces a sacred pause into the very fabric of the machine. The system is physically incapable of lying about its certainty. Ohm's law becomes the ultimate compliance officer. Some might assume this level of physical verification kills speed, but the hardware authorization pipeline is relentlessly efficient. The system completes a SHA-256 hash and hardware security module signing to issue a permission token in less than 50 milliseconds. That speed is protected by what the architects call the Impossibility Stack. As financial data moves from code into an AI brain, it must pass through the hardware constitutional gate. Any attempt to bypass it breaks the circuit, making unverified execution structurally impossible. And the hardware contains a forbidden hierarchy. Certain actions, like primary forest cutting, habitat destruction, or persistent toxin release trigger an immediate -1 state. The action is physically rejected before a single dollar moves. This stack guarantees that automated power operates inside a hard boundary. We get the speed of modern finance, but bound by an architecture that future operators cannot quietly negotiate away for a wider profit margin. The author of this framework, Lev Goukassian, developed these principles in his final days. He left behind a completed architecture, but the physical reality of his absence presents a new vulnerability. To prevent his mortality from becoming an attack surface, the system relies on institutional immortality. Through anchored succession declarations and an open-source covenant, governance authority transfers to a distributed, verifiable public record. But a new threat has emerged: ethics washing. Some institutions now use the hardware's perfect cryptographic record to shield predatory strategies. They design investment models that cause systemic damage while remaining perfectly compliant with local legal definitions. When an architecture is adapted to fit market demands and diluted by consumer research, it ceases to be a framework. It becomes a brand. And a brand can be licensed, compromised, and hollowed out until only a logo remains. The hardware gives us a system that cannot lie. It measures voltage accurately, and it locks the gates precisely as instructed. But it cannot stop human beings from lying to themselves about how they define harm. Knowledge of this vulnerability creates an immediate duty. A constitution survives because people refuse to let it be erased. Technology can reveal the path, but only people can choose to walk it. The ternary logic framework gives us the privilege of relying on physics to check automated power, but the active, unyielding responsibility of human beings is the non-negotiable price of keeping it honest.